What you are about to watch is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute any type of advice. Always question the validity of what you see and what you hear. Viewer discretion is advised.
So you want to learn how to become a more successful tyrant, huh? Well, you've come to the right place. In this lesson, Tyranny 140, we're going to cover 3 concepts that will help you further carry your agenda for control. The 3 topics today are patriotism, education, and family. You may wonder if you came to the wrong class because all 3 topics may seem very beneficial, and they are, but mostly for you. See, words such as patriotism instigate a need to defend the nation, whether that's the land or the politics that it represents. But that matters very little. As we have covered before in our series about the loss of power, you can play into people's fantasies and you will have a cult-like following. For that reason, let them interpret what patriotism means to them, promulgate those crazy ideas about the truth being subjective to the beholder of the concept. Although that is one of the greatest promulgated lies, it works very well because they all play out the fantasy in their own way. You see, some countries like the United States have a very rich history that dates back from the very beginning. The invaders, or founding fathers, as we call them, came to the United States, which was already an occupied land, and took it by force, established their democracy of freedom based on Roman principles, had a few battles with the natives and some with the tyrants back home, challenged the king, established a military, and earned the respect and alliance of their enemies. That alone, right there, builds some pride that the founding fathers were the heroes and the good guys. But if you look at how we hide things in history, such as the take of Texas, northern New Mexico, and California from Mexico by President James Polk, just like Franklin took southern New Mexico and Arizona from them, then you quickly realize that we're not the good guys at all. At least Franklin peacefully warned and intimidated Mexico into compliance. Polk took it by force. We may ask, are we really the good guys? Would the good guys take slaves and leave them out of their constitution because they are considered property rather than humans with rights? Would the good guys use those slaves to secure the win of the Civil War, then rewrite history and later establish Jim Crow law because they regretted their prior decision? Would the good guys treat women and children like property? In case you didn't know, children are still treated like property today. It is called family law, and in there, they establish whose property the children are, usually the woman, so that the man keeps slaving away. They leave enough money on the table so that he has an incentive to work. Would the good guys exploit education in order to inundate their citizens in debt? I hope that I have made my point. See, the word patriotism is such an efficient word, it can instill pride and push plenty of shame so that people will enroll in the military and be proud of it. What about the collateral, you may ask? What about it? The collateral are those soldiers who were well-intended and left their home country to fight some war that stemmed from political disagreement in order to force another tyrant into compliance. The regular citizens became just casualties. Those lucky enough to come back alive without missing parts of their bodies or lost hearing from constantly firing of high-caliber military defense, many times return with horrendous traumas from war. There are tyrants who have honestly downplayed the traumas of war by stating that some people who have never gone to war or engaged in any type of survival that a soldier has can have the same level of post-traumatic stress disorder. That is actually a great insult because going to war is the most scary act that one can go through. I would say that those who have similar traumas to those in the military who have gone to wars are those in the Middle East, living that every day, and those in regions of Mexico where cartels have taken over. But now the media is playing another tyrannical agenda saying that anyone can have the level of mental trauma. Honestly, there is no way. Anyone who has gone to war will respectfully and greatly disagree. But that's besides the point. I think another tyrant created such idea in order to push the agenda of mental health to the public, to justify more taxation, more normalizing of blaming mental self-disagreements for one's lack of desire to succeed and change one's life. And more importantly, to distract the citizens from the corruption that is going on behind closed doors. The word patriotism plays such a powerful role because they get everyone to play the idea of just being thankful for the soldier service and instill the idea that they did the right thing by risking their lives, risking never coming back to their families, and take other nations' freedom away in the name of our illusion of freedom. Although some nations have more freedom than others, no nation is truly free. For example, in the United States, you cannot keep your home if you don't pay property taxes, which is just a name for your yearly rent. You are free to hold your marriage any way you want it, and it's valid. You can have Twinkies and booze at your wedding for the low price of $250, inviting only those you like, and have them bring food for a marriage potluck. And have your buddy who legally got his ordained certificate online for only $20 to marry you. Your wedding will still be valid. Think about this for a second. The marriage contract was signed by you to get that wedding certificate and the marriage license. Outside of all the magical thinking and believing that marriage is a union with God, there is a contract that is being downplayed, and every contract has its terms and conditions. If you fail to fulfill the contractual conditions, which in actuality they are not that difficult or problematic, the small print comes with the fact that anything that you may acquire during the duration of the marriage becomes marital property, and it is to be divided. Not to forget that it is in your best interest to hire an attorney so he can explain you more of the small print, and so that he can tell you to what level you will be screwed. Not to mention the determination of whether you are in the hook for spousal maintenance, which is just a fancy way to force you to give your cash to your ex and the new partner to laugh at you behind your back. If this is making you angry, good, because it should. The truth has the power to anger you because it destroys whatever fantasies you previously had. We as tyrants need to know the truth. Just let everyone else dwell into their fantasies and their Disney marriage. They will soon realize that there aren't such things. If they only knew that marriage is mostly a contract that binds you to agree with each other and work your differences or pay the pretty penny. If only they knew that they get a much better deal by not getting married and just living together. That's why the church plays such an important role in this game, because they shame people into getting married so that they are not living in sin. Little do they know that there is nothing sinful about two people accepting each other and living together without bothering anyone or being bothered. Then, when the relationship ends, it's okay for both parties to part. This is why Karl Marx was so against how the family was controlled by the church and how the traditional family was beneficial to the tyrannical system. Don't get me wrong, he was still one of us. He gave us an alternative system to play with and gain power even faster through socialism so we could take people's properties even faster. He was an incredible bright tyrant himself. I just think he should have shut his mouth about those concepts. Anyway, I have gone enough about this topic, I believe. I've sort of gotten things out of order, but since we're on topic, let's talk about the family system and how that's beneficial to the tyranny, and then we will pick up on the concept of education, just so that we continue to connect the dots eloquently and so that this conversation flows in a better order. You see, the family is an integral part of every nation. Without a family structure, even if it is a broken one, we're not able to do nearly as much as we can. I'm going to present you both a successful nuclear family structure and a broken family structure and explain you how both equally benefit us. We as Tyrants have covered all bases when it comes to succeeding in our position and with our policies. When it comes to a successful nuclear family, you will have generations of taxpayers, proud patriots, and models to look after directly in the family and in the nation. It truly does bring more power to your nation because you develop a workforce that makes more solid and faster discoveries, which gives you a huge advantage over other nations. More workforce, discoveries, and opportunities for imports and exports means more power. As I mentioned to you before, the true power of the economy is the labor force. Families who are healthy tend to stay in jobs for a long time, develop companies of their own, and pass the wealth to their heirs, which in turn creates a powerful reputation around your nation. People from other nations begin to look up to your nation, and people go out of their way to become residents and then citizens of your countries so they can contribute to the labor market, which is the actual economy, as I mentioned just now, and develop their own companies and now become American companies. It is what many have labeled as the American dream. They came up with that idea on their own. When they did, it took us a minute to get on board with that, but we quickly learned to like it and get on board with it. We exploited its benefits for so long, and some of us even missed those days because power grew for everyone around it. People from all over the world moved to those nations and want to establish their roots and the future of their bloodline. However, don't be quick to judge and try to confront us about why then on earth did we perform an experiment on developing broken families. You see, for a long time, we realized that the father was the head of the household. He worked and brought the bacon and the tax money for the family, got him a home, drove a car, learned to work on the car, taught mechanical and construction skills to his sons. The mom usually stayed at home, fed the family, handled finances to ensure all expenses were paid, and many of those moms were extremely intelligent because they even managed to rack up money on those savings accounts. Dad usually worked until retirement. The sons would enlist in the military, serve their term, learn a trade, would found their own companies that would help him advance or start other companies and give opportunities to others to learn useful trade skills. The daughters will assimilate what the mom was doing, usually look up to marry a man who was like dad in order to secure a safe position like mom, and pass the same ideas to her daughters, and the sons would have the same ideas as her brothers because she would marry a man just like her dad. This is where things got pretty interesting. At some point, the tyrants became curious. Believe it or not, some of the things that tyrants do is just out of curiosity, whether it is a really strange policy such as not let anyone from a specific faith travel or spreading a worldwide pandemic. The reason behind it is that there is some very useful data to gather. For example, with a flu like the bird flu, if no one takes the bait, then there is data to collect to understand that no one took the bait, and therefore that idea needs to be modified or discarded. On this particular meeting, the tyrants wanted to compare the benefits of a prosperous family versus a broken family. They already had the data on the prosperous family, but now they needed the data for the broken family. The proposition was that a broken family would create a set of obedient people who would have way too many issues to pay attention to policy and to stand up against it. That right there was a very intriguing proposition. So like everything else, the tyrants proposed to implement the experiment only if a detailed plan was presented. I'm not sure how long it took them to develop the plan or if it was already developed by the time the proposition was made. The idea is that what was proposed is to bring mom and dad in disagreement against each other and to remove dad from the home. The idea was to make it so difficult for the father to stay that many of them would just walk away. If the fathers walked away, sons would be left without a guidance. They would likely marry a broken woman like their mothers and would repeat the vicious cycle. Daughters would grow up to hate men, but end up giving into their biological nature and have children with men who were not well suited for marriage or relationships, and in turn, repeat that cycle. The tyrants were delighted by the idea of the plan for the experiment, but wondered how on earth they would get mom and dad to disagree with each other. The proposed solution was actually very easy. The plan was to actually let out the truth that women were considered property. Some tyrants became appalled and tried to shut down the idea, but others wanted to hear the rest. The idea was to let out the truth that women were considered property, help abolish that idea, and blame it on men for that. Even make men members of an imaginary cabal club called the Patriarchy. Have schools dedicate time to indoctrinate women into this new philosophy called feminism and have them become resentful of men, and this would ensure that they would try to constantly prove their independence and try to compete with men so that those relationships will fail. The tyrants loved the idea and decided to carry that agenda. Some have taken it a bit far by telling women that being on the OF app and defiling their bodies for money is empowering. They got that idea from Edward Bernays, who got women to think that smoking was empowering, which was collected as important data to carry gender wars, which are still happening today. It has actually gone much farther now with oppressive agendas that allow men to be convicted without evidence regardless of what the Constitution says and due diligence in court procedures. This is a bit of a history of where the family manipulation has been, and regardless of what side you are on, there's plenty of opportunities to take advantage of a tired and frustrated population who will want you in office if you tell them what they want to hear. Now let's move into the last part, which is education. Education in its true form is a very powerful strategy. Ever wonder why rich people send their children to super expensive and prestigious schools and universities? The reason is simple. Because true education holds the key to wisdom and discernment in making the best choices in any industry that you can think of. whether it is big tech, the medical field, and anything that surrounds building infrastructures. It also holds the key to choosing better relationships, trading opportunities with others who have different sets of skills in exchange for progress, and even creates more opportunities of freedom to choose where to live and what to do with your time. On the other hand, education can be used and abused to mislead, indoctrinate, and even spread hate or strange agendas against each other. Since children are relatively small, they are taught to listen to their teachers and obey their elders. These make children very vulnerable and subject to exploitative agendas. We all grew up with Disney movies because those movies were like virtual teachers to us. Is there any wonder why Disney has acquired Marvel and gone woke? Who doesn't remember having a superhero as a small child? Many of us loved Spider-Man, and chances are that you probably did too. Companies like Disney use those fantasies that children love in order to indoctrinate them into woke ideology. But people are not stupid. They're waking up to the game and boycotting garbage. Education has also found its way around not just indoctrination, because not all are on board with that idea, which is becoming more and more obvious every day. Some schools have gotten on board with creating useless online classes in order to rake up the money from people all over the United States in exchange for degrees that are pretty much worthless because they don't provide the experience that the workforce requires in order to enter any of the industries that were promised to them. People are waking up to that scam as well, and that's why they are currently demanding that that be canceled. Not all schools are on board with financial exploitation. Schools like UC Santa Barbara and the new college in Florida are dancing that song at a very different tune. UC Santa Barbara, regardless of being in such a chaotic state, they provide some incredible programs to the residents where they only pay about $145 for 4-credit class for the extension programs, which can lead people into licensing in behavior analysis and accounting, which are known to earn substantial wages. The new college in Florida actually launched a program geared towards independent thinking at about $160 per 4-credit class. There are other platforms that cost a small fraction that teach people Power BI, Python, SQL, and other industries on demand. Places such as WizLabs and Learn SQL provide these skills for a very small fraction of what some colleges charge for even just one class. I know that you as a tyrant may be asking me, why am I teaching you how to opt out of the tyranny? In order to dominate a nation, you must first understand how the scheme works. As you can see, it is all tied up together. The family or the separation of the family bring the idea of need for education and patriotism. In a well-functioning family, the family wants the best education for the children and to be patriotic because there is so much to be thankful based on the conditions that they're living under. In a broken family, the isolated members, who are usually the children growing into adults, they desire the idea of better education and to fix the family issues that they have always suffered from. They also may become patriotic to the other side.